You're listening to the Low Pressure Podcast, the podcast for skiers.
Presented by CMH Heli Skiing and Peak Performance.
Are you ready for an unforgettable ski experience that takes care of everything? Well, visit one at Club Med's mountain resorts and experience the thrill of the slopes without having to worry about a thing. With their all-inclusive packages, you'll get your lift passes, you'll get lessons, delicious meals, exciting après activities, even childcare for the kids. All that's included in the price so you can focus on what matters most, carving perfect turns and enjoying breathtaking views. Visit www.clubmed.us, call 1-800-CLUB-MED, or talk to your travel advisor and book your ski escape getaway today.
That covers That's on Usumi, but they Photoshop Mont Blanc in the back.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
This, really?
Yeah. See? You can tell there's no track behind me.
Yeah. That's hilarious. All right, well, we're started. Peter, nice to see you. Thanks for coming to the studio.
Hey, well, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. We got a legend, a whistler legend in the house today. So you've written a book. This is the third installment of the LPP Reads series, and your book is called I Survived Myself, which I think is a phenomenal title. Did you come up with that yourself, or did you have help with that one?
Oh, I had help. I was trying. It all started with a guy telling me, "Hey, Peter, congratulations on surviving your lifestyle." And I thought, that's kind of neat, but it's kind of a long title.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, I survived again. And then a friend of mine in Mexico said, "Peter, like, come on, all those screw-ups, those accidents. I mean, you survived yourself."
Yeah.
Really. And I thought, hey, that's kind of good because that's kind of humbling a little bit.
Yep.
It's not, hey, I survived again.
Or like look at all the look at how I've overcome. I'm better than It's more of a tongue in cheek being like, well, that was close,
Well, they were all my fault, all those accidents.
Yeah.
Bad choice or bad luck.
Yeah.
But all really your choice, right? So.
Do you find that obviously you put that in the book, but do you I guess relate to yourself in that way? Like, I've had a lot of mistakes and I'm lucky that I'm here, or is it one of those things where, maybe you learn from it, or is that how you view yourself? Like, I've screwed up a lot and I'm pretty lucky that I'm here, or are you like, hey, I'm fortunate, maybe there's a reason and I can learn from that?
I don't know. I mean, I wish I could say there was some divine intervention, because sometimes, some of the things that I seem to get away with, I can't hardly believe myself. But most of it is just really, a lot of luck along the way, because all of every accident really was kind of a bad choice or something along the way.
Right, just like you looking back retrospectively, like, ooh, I shouldn't have done that, and this is how it ended up. So the book starts with you sliding into a crevasse by yourself and crawling out. So I was like, oh, this is going to be wild, and everything from like crevasse to rolling cars to paragliding accidents to ski accidents. But I'd say that's not necessarily like the premier focus of the book. You put so much in here, and I was like, this guy's lived a long life. And to be honest with you, I was pretty impressed at your ability to remember all of these stories. So I'm reading this book, and like there's anecdotes about trips to South America and trips through different peaks and whatnot through North America, all your different adventures and objectives. And a lot of those are really well detailed, and you have a lot of good memory about them. Do you have like journals that you reference within these books?
Well, no, but I just thank my films, really, because my whole life has been just going project to project, film by film. So every film is such a great time marker. In 1983, 84, I did Search for the Ultimate Run, my first kind of film. Steve Peru, which introduced me to filmmaking in 1978, which is on the cover of the book, actually.
Yeah.
It's from that trip.
This is a cool cover. This is a great cover, by the way. Like, what a badass. I don't know if you guys can see on those of you listening to this. There's videos on YouTube as well, so you can actually see the conversation and the cover of the book. We're gonna make sure we post this on all of the links.
This is the Polish book, of course.
Is this the same? Is this the same?
Same book.
Same book, but different cover. Why do they do different covers?
And the Polish guy thought, well, I'm not known at all. Action will sell. But I didn't agree with him. I bet she'd sell more books in Poland with the hat. I like the hat cover more because you're restricted to skiers with a ski shot, I think.
Yeah.
Like a non-skier won't recognize that shot. So you're in the cold.
You're basically telling them this is what this is.
Yeah.
Whereas this shot where you're standing with the skis in a field with the huge mountain behind with the hat, just having that look, you're like, that gives you a little bit more.
Traveler, explorer, more of a look, more generic.
Yeah, exactly. So the book itself is a big book. Like it says, it covers a lot of your life. The foreword is actually written by Sylvain Soudan, who was a friend of yours, who's kind of a hero to start and then became a friend. Is that correct?
Yeah, he was a hero. I mean, I heard of him and Patrick Valenciennes, Jean-Marc Boivin were some. They followed Sudan, and they were the kind of the founders of the sport, really, of extreme skiing in a way.
Yeah, and so I brought that up because famously here in Whistler we used to have the Sudan Couloir and the Sudan Couloir race, and he sued Intrawest at the time, saying, "Hey, like you guys are making money off my name, then they pay me for it," and they're like, "Nah, we'll just change the name." Which they ended up doing. But I think, I didn't realize this, but in the book, you kind of hold a little bit of responsibility, you take a little bit of that responsibility on yourself for the origins of him removing the name or the initial lawsuit.
Well, I brought him here, right? He didn't know the extent the name was being used because we brought him to Mount Waddington. Then he started walking around town and seeing his name on coffee cups and even the Sudan sandwich and, around town. And this had gone on for 9 years. Like 9 years, somebody could have invited him over, and then the couloir and then the race. I mean, it wasn't even the race. You would have been honored by the race, but you had all these corporates, Fujifilm, Air Canada, all these big, huge corporates, using his name without his knowledge, with the race. So he threatened to sue them. I think he got paid out. I don't even know the details under the table
to settle
it, and then 30 years they kind of cowered and they changed the name. Couloir Extreme is such a terrible name.
It wasn't good. And it was already past the time when the word extreme was already done. You know what I mean? It
was already done.
It had been exhausted, and then they called it Couloir Extreme. We're like, whatever.
Couloir Tacky Extreme.
Yeah. And then in recent years, since Vail bought it, one of the positives you can say about Vail coming to Whistler was that they brought him out, they renamed it Sudan Couloir, they gave him a ceremony, they gave him his credit and his the appropriate props, I guess, and did it the right way, so it's now Sudan Couloir again.
Yeah, it was there was a lot behind it because nobody wanted to touch it in Whistler, and I had to phone in the CEO of Vail and badger them.
Oh, was you part of that as well?
I kind of orchestrated the whole thing.
Really?
Because Sudan came back and he said, "Peter, I could kind of give him the name back."
Oh, yeah?
And so I tried Whistler at the time, and everybody had their head buried because of the
COVID
lawsuit.
And everything. Yeah.
Well, the lawsuit, he should give us the money back, But I knew Americans are Americans. They're more marketing orientated, right? So I called Vail, the CEO. I couldn't get through to the CEO, but his executive secretary was really nice, Linda. And she let him know, hey, Sudan's back and he's willing to do a deal for the name back. He'll get the name back.
Right.
So the next day, all of a sudden, boom, phone call from Vail. Red carpet for Sylvain. Everybody taking selfies at the rendezvous with him.
I thought it was a nice moment, to be honest.
Yeah,
I thought it was the whole thing was silly, but it was just because I ski here, and I'm like, I got to call this something different. I'm like, no one called it the Cool Extreme.
Yeah, and then they
Everybody
brought
that
him
had lived
back.
here, anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, and then they brought him back. I'm kind of a little bit chapped because I was hoping to get a lifetime ski pass out of doing the whole deal. That's all.
Oh yeah, like facilitating and bringing all this.
Yeah. But I never got that.
Right. So that I love that you kind of bring that up, because throughout the book there are several stories where you that things have happened with Whistler Blackcomb or you and Whistler Blackcomb where you're kind of, well, I guess you finish the story being like, well, I don't think they really like that, and I'm kind of in the bad books and that sort of thing. Has it kind of been like the theme with you and this town and you know, do you feel like you kind of have like this black sheep sort of sort of opinion about you, or is that just on yourself?
If I don't know if I'm a little, maybe overly conscious or subconsciously of it, but yeah, I mean, I've never really followed the mainstream, so I've never been kind of invited into the
Inner circle.
legends,
Yeah.
The inner circle, the race, the racing Whistler ski clubs and the older legends, the Tony Siler's, the whole thing there. So and also doing a lot of I got on the bad side of the patrol quite often because we were skiing all this rad stuff.
Yeah, you're skiing rad stuff. Like that's what happens. Like we've, when you go to a certain spot and it's cloudy, and when the patrol's doing their run, and you got to make sure you get in and out, do a strike mission, or back in the day when I was a ski school instructor, we would take our jackets and put them inside out and go do a lap.
Or you hide up in the
in the woods for a while.
The woods, or in the kind of a semi-snow cave up on top of Peak Chair after they clear, and you don't miss. But somehow they got word.
Yeah, talk about that story.
It was great. Well, always don't miss was always this catch.
Yeah, so don't miss, for those people that are listening. If you've been to Whistler, you're going up the Whistler Chair, and right near the top, if you look to the left, there's this steep, exposed, gnarly face, which looks like a lot of fun, and it's now permanently closed. Dan Treadway lost his pass for airing it and getting a cover of Powder Magazine, and that's the whole free Treadway. If you ever see free Treadway stickers lying around every once in a while, that's from that. But even before then, you guys were poaching that zone or skiing that zone. Well, they weren't really happy about it. It wasn't officially closed then.
Yeah, we kept on, just kept on skiing it whenever we could sneak in there and quickly rip down there and then hang a left and sidestep up and into the VDs,
Mm-hmm.
And
kind of like Blackcomb Peak right now. Every once in a while, you'll still see a couple tracks down Blackcomb Peak after the patrol is done and the solar coaster chairs stop spinning.
So we were doing that, and it wasn't ever officially closed. But then they had this Pepsi Celebrity Challenge back in the '86 or '87, and all these celebrities were there, and Sean Hughes, he's a legend in skiing and Whistler skied it, and he got caught in a bit of a slide, went down. So I thought the slide was already there. I went again, and it was a double fracture. Another 2 feet went with me, and I got hurled into that second chute in the slide. Ended up with this Pepsi Celebrity Challenge. These celebrities.
Everybody watching.
Yeah, all freaked out, and so then they officially closed Don't Miss.
Right, because it wasn't like you were doing it at the end of the day. You were doing it in front of a bunch of people at the wrong time.
Yeah, but we did it one more time a few years, about 10 years later, 20 years ago or so, with a friend Kent. We hiked up. We skied the east face first after staying up,
right,
and then hiked back up the regular face, and then all these patrollers were on snowmobiles down below. We didn't realize they were waiting looking at us like in the drive-in movie.
Yeah.
About 20
Watching the show, and then
Yeah.
they're going to,
So then my friend managed to go left into the VDs, and I thought I'll pretend that and I'll go right again to fool them, and they caught me. So I tried the case, the case of beer to the patroller. Come on, don't take my pass.
Did it work?
Yeah.
So, and see, that wouldn't really fly nowadays,
No,
unfortunately.
no.
It's just really not the same anymore. And you even put a story in here about, putting your pass in a glove and dropping it off the gondola, which I've done in the past, back in the early days of being here. But it doesn't really quite work anymore because they can scan your pass, they see your face. But it was with Dave Brownlee, who was like one of the head honchos of Whistler Blackcomb at the time, or on his way. Like he's a legendary figure in Whistler Blackcomb. He's one of the characters that made Whistler what it is. And so you got caught using his pass or passing his pass off.
No, Bob Dufour.
Pardon me. Yeah, it was Bob Dufour.
Poor Bob, because he got a real lecture later. They had a whole conference about it, I think. The lifty that founded Busby was a lifetime lifty, just retired.
Oh, Buzz?
Buzz.
Yeah, he was
Buzz,
the worst.
Don't tell, because Bob's just going to have so much trouble. We were just going to singing pass. We didn't want to wait in the lineup to get a backcountry pass. Come on, Buzz. No, Buzz, we're at it.
Oh yeah, that's he had that reputation to the last day. Everybody knew who this guy was in his stupid yellow coat, and very little respect amongst skiers on our mountain. But everybody needs a heel, right? Every hero needs a heel, right?
Yeah.
In our own story, we're the heroes. You just avoid this guy. If you get anywhere near him and he's waving you down for any reason, well, you just tuck and ski faster and disappear into the woods, if that's the case. But obviously we don't do that because you got to abide by the rules.
But, the most classic thing I can remember is long before that, in the early 80s, a very well-known ski patroller at the time, we would make the passes regular size, like big size, 8x10, with letters set and photo, because there was no computer scanners or anything, and then you would reduce it, so all the flaws would go out when you reduce it.
Right. Oh, so you just counterfeit the passes.
Yeah, counterfeit passes. All the squatters paid $15 a piece.
Right.
For the materials, and about 30 squatters had the pass.
Because you lived in town. It's funny, like there's doing this show for so long and talking to so many people and being here for 25 years myself, there's so many different eras of Whistler. And a lot of people may or may not know, but Whistler back in the 60s, 70s, and even into the 80s had a huge squatter culture. Like these houses built in the...
Over 30 squats.
Yeah, exactly. Even the former mayor who just won the Freedom of the Municipality Award, Nancy Morden, who famously talked about not wanting the brown baggers to come up from the city to visit Whistler because they're not spending any money, used to live in a squat in Whistler herself. And that was just kind of the culture where it was like dirtbag skiers. We're here to live as cheaply as possible and ski as much as possible and adventure as much as possible. But with everything, I really enjoyed the part of the book where you described kind of the decline of that culture. Them handing out, them cracking down on the squats, handing out eviction notices, that sort of thing. And then you mentioning Seppo, who was Seppo Mäkinen, who's the guy who cut all the runs on Whistler Blackcomb, the Finnish logger, and how when he ended up passing away, it's kind of like, and even mentioned in the book, it was kind of the end of an era. And I read that, and I was here, that was my first year here. And
well, you wonder why all the runs on Whistler are offline. Like you got all these traverses because he followed the good trees, not the fall line.
Yeah, exactly. He followed the good trees so he could get the good wood. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah.
Oh, interesting. So what I'm getting to is like there's this kind of culture and era that had come to an end there, which was interesting for me to read about from your point of view, and then my next 10, 15 years of Whistler, I have my own story and my own culture of the skiers on Blackcomb and the whole crew and the houses and the parties and basically everything you were explaining is kind of parallel to what my experience is, but different in just a second era. And then in my opinion, COVID was kind of the end of that. And now with the new generation, all the new young skiers, snowboarders, I'm witnessing them develop their own new culture and their own new kind of era of skiing in this town, which I find super fascinating. So it was great reading that part in your book just to kind of get a better idea of like, the history that you're not going to find at the Whistler Museum kind of thing, right? It's the counterculture stories.
But the counterculture is always there, it was there before us in the 60s with Toad Hall and stuff, even, the hippier hippies even.
Yeah.
And snowboarding brought in a whole new thing. That was around 88, 89. Whole new scene.
Yeah, right. So I found it fascinating about that you not only talked about your exploits, but what was going around in the culture and in the area around you here. So for the book, you write in some of the early chapters that you're really inspired by adventure travel books. And you write like specifically like Paddle to the Amazon, which I think I'm going to pick up because you wrote about it. And I was like, oh, I want to read that book.
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff fascinates me as well. And, you said that kind of was a big part of, I guess, helping you help you with the direction of the way your life was going to go. That along with the massive road trip that you took with your family to South America early in your life. While writing this book, did you go back to some of these other books that you had read for inspiration, or did you tap into them to kind of help you with the writing? Like, is this your first novel, your first book?
Yeah, I don't know. It will probably be my only one, because I always thought of writing, but I knew I didn't have the discipline to sit an hour or two a night.
Right.
I just had a really bad accident, and I was so angry. And I vented it writing 14 hours a day.
Just to get it out.
Yeah.
Right. And then, so it wasn't really, I want to do this one day. It's just like, I'm pissed off and this is my kind of release.
Yeah. I always wanted to do it, and I started and then I lost 10,000 words on my computer.
Oh, no.
Oh no. Or even 12,000. I thought, and when you do that, you don't want to write that 12,000 all over again. I thought,
right.
No. I'm just not kind of made for it. It's not meant to be. And then I had a really bad accident. And then afterwards, I was so angry. I
wrote it out again. And it's interesting too, because I'm sure you learned a lot about the process of like writing. Did you have any big mentors or any people to lean on to be like, hey, how do you do this? Or did you just, because I think the theme in this book with a lot of this, you have a lot of first descents, you have a lot of firsts, and a lot of the adventuring that you do seems like you're just like, I'm just going to go figure it out when I'm there, right? From those early days when you're talking about stories where I didn't quite have enough water, or the equipment that you have or the gear you have is insufficient based on today's standards. But you just kind of just went and did it and figured it out as you went. And then, like the book says, survived yourself. Is that kind of the same process with writing the book?
Yeah, I wrote a lot of magazine articles. I've written some more of a news writer, kind of travel writer,
Right.
Because it helped on projects to fund, to get some extra funding from some articles and photos sold, right? So I've always wrote that, but I just didn't think I had the discipline to get me through a book, and. Yeah, after I wrote it in about 6 weeks, quite quickly, the bulk of it, and then spent 4 or 5 years editing it and
cutting it down
and learning about the business. And I was inspired by Joe Simpson's This Game of Ghosts. Not Touching the Void. I like Touching the Void, but it was like one thing, and my life had so many things. Rather than write about one expedition.
Right.
So that book. About sibling rivalry, his background and stuff. I'm a single child, so I had no siblings. But anyway, the format I really liked of his, and so that kind of inspired me.
Right.
And a lot of books by authors like Wade Davis from from Sierra Nevada. He wrote an amazing book, One River, about these Kogi natives who I dreamed about since I was 12 years old from reading on National Geographic.
Right.
So ideas came,
Right.
And film, I found that time hardly anyone was really doing films. There was, I think, just myself, Warren Miller, Greg Stump, and James Angrove started up. So it was a way of just keeping the lifestyle going. I couldn't support myself. I didn't have enough contracts for writing like the articles were because I was doing an interesting film.
Right. It's kind of helping you get the funding to do the adventure. It's like, well, we'll write something about it too and take some photos. And because back then there was no internet, right?
There was no internet. No, I mean you had to stand by a fax all day and get your proposal.
Yeah, exactly. And then submit it, and hopefully that someone will pick it up for you. Do you know what I mean? So one of the things that I've noticed in here, and you even mentioned it when you sat down, is that you seem to be very, very good at fundraising. As I said, it was just like you mentioned, it's just kind of a means to enable yourself to go on these adventures, which you've been doing your whole life. And really looking at this, I always thought you were like, that adventure skier, that sort of thing, but you're more of a filmmaker than anything. Is that how you define yourself over your career?
I think so. I mean, film was the format, the conduit, which enabled me to, not only do adventures, but also if I found an interesting story to tell about a town or a person, it gave me the vehicle kind of to do it.
Right.
And as I was, driven by it, and in many ways now I'm finding, my publisher in Poland's thinking, Peter, you should do a second book and say how each project was done, which is going to be my talks now. I have some motivational kind of talks to show how each one was done without that. You don't need a lot of money, but you have to be creative. Like my projects were never greatly funded, and I wasn't great at getting money, but I was really great in getting resources, contra, and just whatever way to get the project done.
You're the original hustler. I was reading this. I'm like, this guy's a hustler, man. You just got to do what you can do in order to get what
I hate that name, though, hustler.
Do you hate it? It's true, though.
No.
That's.
I am a shameless self-promoter sometimes, and I have to be because I don't have a publisher.
Right.
But I guess hustler, because when you see an opportunity, you got to cut in and see if there's
exactly in a world like this where everybody's trying to get a piece of the pie. Sometimes there's different routes to go about it and get it. You know what I mean? Like there's some stories in there about the Traverse race you were talking about, and you talked to like the daughter of the guy who runs Bombardier, and you hassled her, and she managed to get you a couple grand. But she's like, but we don't want Bombardier to be a part of this in any way. And you're like, all right. I think you called it a reverse partnership, or reverse sponsorship, which I've actually had in the past as well. So I kind of I read that part again last night, and I kind of chuckled about it because I've had that situation too. They're like, we'll give you some money and do this, but we don't want you to talk about our brand. I'm like, okay.
But everybody will know, the right people will know, the snowmobilers will know because they all got free fuel, right?
Yeah,
so
right. Yeah.
It's a nice way. Smart lady, And,
the people that need to know the people that need to know will know, and the people that they don't need to know, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Do you have like a specific, achievement or fundraising or like a story like that just sticks out? You're like, wow, that was really, I don't know how I pulled that off, but I did. Does anything jump out at you?
Well, one film jumps out at me.
Yep.
In particular, and that was a film, The Spirit, for Trevor Peterson.
Right.
And it was just so many miracles along the way to make that film happen. In the first year, I heard Trevor died. Troy Youngin was going to Europe, and somehow I got a little bit of money from a distributor, up front, to make a film about Trevor, but it wasn't enough. I didn't have a camera.
Right.
I went to Europe without a camera, a few $100s, and to make a film about Trevor, what happened to him when he died in Chamonix skiing couloir cosmique, right? And but everywhere was like Trevor spread almost like every time I saw a crow, I thought, like, quah, quah.
He's hanging out, right?
He's hanging out and he's helping me do this film. It was like just so strange things happened. Everywhere I met people that loaned me cameras, I had tapes with me. I met TV crews that filmed interviews for me in Chamonix along the way and sent me the tapes back home later. And just everybody that knew Trevor that had footage of him pulled in. I was sourcing from 120 hours of footage for an hour documentary.
Right.
And it was just all these magical things.
He was guiding the project.
All these magical things happened, and it felt like he was guiding the project. So that's one example I'd like to use just of a film in general. How it got done. And then we got back here, and now it was the time to post. And I chatted up to CBC, and they gave us a co-production deal. Sent a crew to interview Tanya, Trevor's wife, and baby Kai, and all these other master shots I had, and then I got the post deal from them to
do some editing
to edit the whole
at 2 a.m,
and 2 a.m, because they were angry, or some skier guy using their facility.
Either that, or maybe that's the only time that they had available potentially,
but they weren't that busy. There was a white elephant at CBC station. It was like communist Poland.
The CBC,
the halls of the CBC, they had nothing going on. That's why they started renting to Hollywood North all their facilities.
Oh, really?
They had nothing going on producing. So in a way, I feel really good. We gave them something to do. We put about 6 films through there.
Right. Yeah. So you did the CBC a favor.
Yeah.
I love it. So another thing I want to talk about is you were on the judging panel at the first World Extreme Skiing Championship in Alaska, and you did 9 years of judging there.
Yeah.
So as I was mentioning to you, I'm a huge Freeride World Tour fan. I actually produced a podcast for the tour for 2 years, and then have taken ownership of it and rebranded. It's called the Freeride Guide, and essentially it's like sports radio for the Freeride World Tour, and all of the news and recaps of the action and discussion about the tour. But you were there from the very first. Now, first of all, before I get into that, do you still follow any freeride competitions, or do you pay attention at all anymore?
A little bit. I just knew Logan won 1 year, Eric's son, and they kind of it kind of drifted away from us,
Right.
Kai came up with his DOP when he was making a movie, and he spent a couple hours at my house, and we did all these interviews, but then I don't think he got the sponsors that year to make the film with it. And so I've been kind of out of it, and I'd like to get back in it, because I've got a lot of ski brands and stuff that I would like to follow up on, like 40 years worth, that I could do something.
Right. So talk about those early days of the Extreme Skiing Championships. Like, was it like, how loose was it when it first started? Was it like, hey, let's just find a peak and send some guys down?
No, it was pretty amazing, because there was big money behind it. And the guy was brilliant, Mike Kozad, that came up with the idea. Exxon just had the oil spill. There was all this guilt money from Exxon to help.
After the Exxon oil spill, the guilt money, so people were pumping money into the area.
So, and the Alyeska pipeline that was hooked up to Exxon, they were seen as liable for it as well. So all of a sudden, Mike said, well, look, let's get skiing, winter tourism going. He got a couple $1 million from Exxon. Alyeska pipeline gave us like 300 volunteers, to work for a week, paid.
Like their camp, like their workers?
Yeah. We had 300 volunteers.
We're shutting down the pipeline for a week. You guys are going to go work at an extreme skiing competition?
That time of year, it wasn't really working. They were there just being paid, doing cleanup jobs and stuff like that.
Right.
Whatever. So it was amazing. We had too many volunteers. We had 300 people, mummies making cookies, and dads doing, like 3 security guards to one.
Right.
And
Yeah.
And but yeah, it was just brilliant. And they kept it going for 9 years, and then I think probably the Exxon money dried up, and also the focus changed. I think the people got tired of it. Just got burnt out a little bit.
Yeah, just evolved into the next phase before it eventually got to where it is now, which is a FIS under the FIS umbrella, and will potentially be in the Olympics in either the next year or the Olympics following.
Wow, I didn't realize that. Then the snowboard championships started partway through that when we were in Alaska, I think in '82, after the ski championships, which later developed into the big mountain snowboarding. But Valdez was a really interesting animal. We did a really neat film. Valdez Goes Extreme about the town and the whole process on how it happened. And the film won a big award in the big Chicago festival, like a regular film festival like Berlin, Toronto,
Right.
So that was a really neat experience. And I got to go to Alaska for 6 weeks, and the judges, we helped find all the mountains, but everything was like military with so many volunteers. It was like the American military was running it almost. It was really together from day one.
Really, I would have thought something like that would have been a little bit more cowboy, a little bit like seat of the pants sort of thing. But I guess with that manpower.
With that much manpower and serious Exxon money and liability and and all that, everything was like just like
to the word, to the letter.
It was really amazing. It was almost funny, in some ways. They had one accident, only one fatality in those 9 years, which is, pretty good record too. The safety was really.
So you guys were responsible as judges to find the faces, is that correct?
Well, we helped find a lot of the peaks. I mean, a lot of the peaks were suggested, and then we find them, and we got to ski all the peaks.
We had to go and ski them a few times to make sure they were worthy. So basically, you were hired for a job to go ski a bunch of first descents, because no one's really ever skied Alaska at this point. So it's like, how many first descents did we get today? 3 or 4?
I didn't even count all those, in my list, because they were all helicopter access. And then we got to ski every run we pre-ran every race too, to check the conditions and stuff too. So 2 years I had to I was on the snowboard there though, because I tore my ACL on my other leg, and I couldn't ski because the ski would go off, but both feet on the plank I could snowboard until I got it operated to go back to ski.
Right. Yeah, that's fascinating to me. I would have thought that it was a little bit a little bit more loose, but it's interesting to see kind of how that went, and I guess right place at the right time for you, right? I missed one. I also did the Crested Butte, and that was really well organized. The extremes at Crested Butte 1 year. They had Anselm Bold there, Patrick Valencin's partner, as a judge, and then I did one in Chamonix, where Jan Andre won, and that was really really well organized. And no, they were serious events, a lot more serious than my Traverse race. Right.
Stuff like that.
Do you want to talk about your Traverse race?
Yeah, well, the Traverse race was something very special. It's never been repeated. I saw these mountaineering races in Europe, like the Grand Défi Teams of 5 with Jean-Marc Boivin actually leading a team. And a girlfriend of mine was on a team, and she told me, Peter, you should do something like that in Canada, in BC.
So what was it exactly?
It was just having to carry your gear, except in Europe they had huts.
Right.
And so I said, well, let's do a 3-day race from Brandywine to Meager Creek, which is 100K across the Pemberton Ice Cap. You got to carry all your own stuff. There's no huts along the way.
Right.
One skier, one snowboarder, one telemarker on every team. Teams of 5, one woman on every team also. Originally, then we also have one woman team. So we had about 8 teams, but all of a sudden, it was like 28 degrees.
What time of year was this?
It was May 8th, and it was all good. And then the Pineapple Express came in, and everything got sloppy, and all the teams had to be evacuated and rescued, except for remnants of all the teams, one team formed on the ice cap, and they actually finished
Okay.
the race.
Right.
So it was doable, but people wanted to sue me and stuff for. We had to rescue snowboarders in the middle of nowhere. We had a ski plane and a helicopter, like
Right.
snowboarders with cowboy, Kmart cowboy and Indian sleeping bags.
So
not prepared.
So like one of those like full on adventure races,
Yeah.
which is a huge industry now
Mhm.
that you kind of tried to put together maybe 20 years ahead of its time.
Yeah, and I was hoping, hey, we'd start something, but again, the liability, we did it without without land use permits, without anything, on the shoestring. We got sponsored by Thule racks. All these racks from Sweden came, and so we had those for prizes. I broke my leg, so I had to be medevaced. So
During the race?
during the race,
Jeez.
checking on the whole thing, being towed by a snowmobile,
Yeah.
behind the snowmobile. I
Right.
fell and I was clipped in. And
So
driver
not only
didn't do
only did you break your leg during this race,
Yeah.
the weather came in and kind of ruined the whole thing. People are getting evacuated.
Yeah.
You're the guy who organized this, so
Yeah.
all of this is coming down on your head. But you're also dealing with a broken leg at the exact
in the
same.
middle. So yeah, I was in a ski plane with my broken leg hanging out, like checking on the race the day after already with my cast.
Wow.
And then one team made it to Meager Creek. It was totally doable. Three days of ski touring. Well, they had mandatory stops.
Right. Check-in stations, right?
Check-in stations. We had Wango and the patrollers
Oh, yeah.
were at the far end on Overlord Glacier. We had the snowmobile club from Squamish and Whistler. Nelson Bastian, he's in his 80s now. So we had this safety net of the snowmobile path from Brandywine to the ice cap.
Yeah.
I'd love to do it again with GPS points and peaks along the way. It would be just so much easier and safer now.
Yeah.
So just, if somebody came to me and said, hey, I'll sponsor that, I'll do it. I'd do it because
Maybe that's something
wonderful
that this town
project.
needs, right? Like they've got little things like the Tough Mudder and Grand Fondos, but these are more for 9-to-5ers that want to do adventuring and whatnot. But we don't really have a Whistler. There's the 50K Seven Peaks race.
Mm-hmm.
There's a 50K in town. There's lots of little ones like that, but something epic like that I think would be really cool to do.
Well, the people that survived it, the team that finished, Greg Stoltman.
The people that survived it.
Yeah, Greg Stoltman, Steve Trendle. Steve almost sued me because he had like such blisters on his feet and some real characters. A guy that runs a bike company and Stoltman. Yeah, Greg Stoltman from and Colin, famous guy from the States who died later. I think 6 people are dead from that film, actually.
But not on the race.
No, but
since
since then have died in a half-hour film. 6 people,
Yeah.
It's wild, kind of.
Well, it just kind of shows, the kind of life that you've been leading and living. We haven't talked about, if you have a first ascent of Mount Robson as well, and was it 7 years of attempts?
Yeah.
To try and get some of your objectives done. So there's that's in the book. If you really people that I suggest picking up the book because there's so many adventures in here. If you're one of those people that is always looking for an adventure, always looking for something different, always looking for something to do that's exciting and is challenging, read this book because that's what you've done your whole life. Now I wanted to ask you. Obviously, you've had numerous accidents, numerous injuries. How's the body feeling right now?
Oh, old age is terrible.
Okay.
No, nothing hurts. It's just stiffer, and I'm not doing enough. The book's making me be on the computer too much. I have to, I just want to get the book out. Maybe I can get picked up by a publisher still. It's still a young book, and really get it out there. But yeah, the body's okay. I've got health issues because I had an injury on my leg, which is not healing in 5 years, and they may have to take the metal out so it doesn't infect.
Right.
canceled my ski pass twice now
Oh no.
because of it. But I'm hoping this year I got better new Intuition liners, which are more comfy.
Right. And in the book too, we don't need to get too much into it, but you know, you've been a paraglider. There's a lot of information about paragliding in the book as well, and accidents, pretty bad accidents. Do you do that anymore?
Yeah, I still do. You know, I only went a couple times this year in Pemberton. There's some politics involved, which I write about in the book, about these new people that moved into town and trying to stop me from flying. And so I fly abroad. Last year I flew in Slovenia, Poland, and Italy, and then Colombia for a month.
Because that's still something you can do where you don't have to worry about stiff legs or metal that needs to be removed or pain. You can just float with the birds, you know?
Well, I need to sprint, you know. I need
to get off the
sometimes
ground,
to get off. If there's no wind, I got to sprint. If there's good wind, I got everything together. My starts are still kind of iffy, you know.
What about the landings?
The landings are okay. I got them dialed. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing how when you've done something your whole life, even when you slow down a little bit, you just know exactly what you're supposed to be doing, so it just makes it easier. It's like watching a person learn how to ski versus a guy who's been skiing for 10 years. You're skiing down the same terrain, but you're using the terrain and you're using gravity for your ability, whereas when you're early, you don't know how to do that yet. It's probably the same.
Yeah, well, skiing, I mean, skiing should be effortless. Gravity should be doing most of the work. And, you know, and like you say, people learning,
they're sweating and they're struggling and they're fighting against the mountain,
against
where
gravity.
Yeah, it's like you go to a ski school group, maybe like a mid-level ski school group, all those skiers could be drenched in sweat and the instructor is shivering with ultra cold because they're you know. Well, this is a really, really amazing book. Can people buy this at most bookstores? Where's the best people for people to find this?
Well, Armchair Books is my official bookstore, as well as Photo Source.
Right here in Whistler, yeah.
And then about 10 other places have samples of them, and I'm just kind of learning where they're going to go, because it's not necessarily a shop. Like hotel lobbies, I think, could carry it. And
right. Before
people leave on their trip. Well, people don't read that much, and on the plane, it's a good place to read.
And for people that are listening too, online is great too. So I'm gonna have a link on the YouTube descriptions for those of you watching. There's a link on the podcast that you're listening to right now. So if you're interested in getting a copy of "I Survived Myself," you should do it. And also, we failed to mention there's a ton of photos in here as well, attached to a lot of these stories. Which is really cool.
Yeah, it's a brutal job. I don't have a publisher in Canada, so I have to do everything kind of myself.
But that's and to be honest,
the Amazon sale.
To be honest with you, it's kind of how you've always done things.
Yeah, it's easier than selling my films, you know. I remember flogging VHS copies, right?
Out of the trunk of your truck or something?
Out of the trunk to pay for a road trip down to the States once we came up with a brilliant idea promoting Expo. And we flogged VHS tapes to pay for the food and gas because everything else was covered.
Hustling. Yeah, hustling.
But selling books is somehow easier. Like I couldn't just pull out a VHS tape at Mosquito Lake on the dock and sell it, right?
Right.
But I sold like 6 books on that dock.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Just go on. Yeah, exactly. Just set up
DVDs,
a stand.
Right?
Exactly.
Different animal. Yeah.
Well, you've lived a lot of life. It's definitely inspiring. Some of the accidents that you've put in here, also terrifying. But you've done a lot, especially with your ski descents. You've got, 20 or so listed here. Amongst many, many other adventures and near misses and car accidents and jails and.
Well, I've got an hour and a half motivational. Well, it's a talk, but it's turning motivational because people have come to me with their kids and gone, look, if you want to do a different life, you don't want to do the family and the white picket fence and the dog, and your genes then start rattling at 40 that you have to have kids, and you want to choose a different life. Look at Peter.
Right.
And people have brought their 10, 12-year-olds in Poland to me because quite an intellectual audience at these mountain festivals in Poland. It was always a little more like
I find
in
most
Canada, it's a smaller niche, but in
Right.
Poland, the whole Himalayan thing is huge.
Oh, really?
So it was really, really interesting. Now I'm thinking, well, why not ride that a little bit and do motivational kind of stuff,
or just talks, inspirational talks, yeah.
to inspire. Hey, you don't have to have a lot of money to do a project. Be creative and find other ways of getting it done.
Yeah.
And you can. And most of all, I want to tell kids, take a year or two off between school and university. Don't be pressured. Find a passion and follow that passion. The passion will bring you the job and the money.
Exactly. It's like what you did. You talk about your schooling in here, and you found a way to kind of blend them both together, right?
Yeah. It's hard to pull a family through it. That's why I haven't found my partner, my soulmate. It's hard to pull a family through it, for sure. But people have. There's all sorts of, couples, outdoor couples doing films and doing stuff. It's just a matter of clicking on that part.
Right on. So is that the next couple years of life for you, is to continue on to, I guess, promote the book, or do you have other grandiose plans in the making?
No, nothing really back. I'd love to do a film with the guy at Skip K2. We have a proposal together. He's been busy, but he had a kid now. He's slowing down. So I'm saying, well, he wants to do a film on culture, maybe, on ski culture. If I would get if this book gets out there and I get noticed, I would do a second, more motivational book, how to do it.
Right,
To, do the world with little money,
Yeah, well, I definitely will have you back for that one for sure, and I'll be paying attention. Awesome. Well, thanks, Peter. Do you have a website that people can go visit as well?
Just the social media. I had one, but it wasn't working out. It's actually on the book. I had peterperu.ca, but I lost the domain. So I'm finding I'm not really selling books on the website, so it doesn't really, it's just regurgitating what's on social media. So I don't bother. They can find me on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on X, on Instagram. So I'm doing that traditional stuff.
Peter
I haven't
Peru.
done TikTok yet. No.
Yeah, I could see you doing some TikTok dances. You think? Maybe that's the next step, eh?
The next dimension.
So Peter Peru Chrzanowski is how you pronounce it correctly?
Chrzanowski, yeah.
Perfect. I Survived Myself. You can get the book at any of the LPP kind of outlets, where either you're listening to it on podcast or you're watching on the YouTube channel. Go into the descriptions and you can link it there straight to the Amazon page. And thanks for coming. I appreciate your time today.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me. It was fun. It's always nice to reminisce a bit.
Yeah, and it's cool hearing some of those, like I said, some of those Whistler stories from a guy that was here a little bit before me. So, yeah, appreciate you. Thanks again.
Yeah, well, thank you.
All right.
You've been listening to the Low Pressure Podcast, the podcast for skiers. This has been a Redmark Media production.